I overheard my fiancé telling his friends our wedding was just a strategic move to access my family business. I didn't confront him, just planned the perfect wedding day surprise that left him speechless and jobless. Now I'm celebrating my promotion while he's drowning in consequences. I was supposed to get married last Saturday. The venue was booked, a stunning waterfront estate in the Hamptons that costs more than some people's homes. The dress was perfect, a custom Vera Wang. That made me feel like royalty. The guest list included everyone from my father's business partners to Brandon's college roommates. The day before the rehearsal dinner, I stopped by Brandon's office to surprise him with lunch from his favorite deli on Fifth Avenue. I'd spent the morning finalizing seating charts and handling last-minute RSVP changes, and I needed to see him, to remind myself why I was putting myself through this $250,000 extravaganza. His assistant wasn't at her desk, so I walked toward his office. Zabar's, bag in hand. The door was cracked open, and I heard laughter. Brandon and what sounded like Michael and a couple other guys from his firm. I was about to push the door open when I heard my name. Emma has no idea, Brandon was saying, his voice dripping with the same confidence that had attracted me to him 2 years ago. Her dad's already talking about bringing me into the executive team after the honeymoon. Imagine, from senior analyst to executive in 1 year, just by putting a ring on the boss's daughter. My stomach dropped. I froze, the paper bag crinkling, slightly in my grip. You sure she won't suspect anything? That was Michael's voice. Women have a sixth sense for this stuff. Brandon laughed. Emma? She's totally blinded by love. Besides, I've been playing this role for 2 years. This wedding is just the final strategic move. By this time next year, I'll have enough board influence to push through that Westlake acquisition we've been discussing. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my lungs started burning. The Westlake acquisition? That was privileged information from my father's company. Information that would be incredibly valuable to Brandon's firm, our biggest competitor. And if it doesn't work out? Someone else asked. Prenup's got enough loopholes to drive a truck. Through, Brandon replied. Either way, I win. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The bag slipped from my fingers, the sandwich I'd so carefully selected now forgotten on the hallway floor. I made it to the elevator before the first tier fell, but by the time I reached the lobby, I was shaking. Updated! Sorry for leaving you hanging, everyone. Thank you for all your supportive comments. You asked if I actually dropped the sandwich. And if Brandon noticed. Yes, I literally left it there on the hallway floor. And no, he was too busy plotting my family's downfall to notice. Would you have confronted him right then and there? I met Brandon during a charity gala 2 years ago. My father's investment firm, Hamilton Partners, was the main sponsor, and I was there representing our family foundation. Brandon worked for Meridian Capital, our biggest competitor, but the rivalry never felt personal until that moment in his office hallway. He approached me at the bar, armed with a perfect smile and an impressive knowledge of vintage wines. By the end of the night, he had my number and I had butterflies. He was ambitious, charismatic, and seemed genuinely interested in my work with the foundation, not just my family name. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The way he casually asked about my father's business decisions. How he always seemed to have insider knowledge of market trends that aligned suspiciously well with Hamilton Partners' investment strategy. The subtle digs about how I could be doing so much more with my business degree than running a charitable foundation. But love is blind, right? Or maybe I was just convenient. The daughter of George Hamilton, the man who transformed a modest family business into a billion-dollar investment empire. The woman with an MBA who chose to focus on philanthropy instead of profit margins. The perfect target for someone like Brandon. Our relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, he had a key to my Upper East Side apartment. At 8 months, we were discussing marriage. At 14 months, he proposed on a private yacht in the Mediterranean, my father's wedding gift to us. The diamond was flawless, the proposal picture perfect. Even Vogue covered it in their society pages. Rachel, my best friend since boarding school, tried to warn me. Don't you think it's weird that he's more excited about your last name than your first? She asked after meeting him for the 3rd time. I dismissed her concerns as jealousy or overprotection. Brandon had already woven his web too tightly around me. The wedding planning consumed my life. Brandon was surprisingly involved, insisting on a high-profile venue and a guest list that included every important name in finance. I thought it was sweet that he cared so much. Now I realized he was curating his future business network, not our special day. My father adored Brandon. They bonded over golf and investment strategies, and Dad had recently started bringing him to board meetings as preparation for the future. Brandon leveraged my father's mentorship into a fast-track promotion at Meridian, and everyone assumed he would eventually transition to Hamilton Partners after the wedding. The day I overheard him in his office, everything fell into place. The intentional run-ins with my father at his favorite lunch spots before we even met. The convenient business trip to the Hamptons the weekend my family would be there. The questions about our company structure disguised as genuine interest in my heritage. I drove around Manhattan for hours that day, replaying every moment of our relationship through this new lens. By the time I returned to my apartment, my shock had hardened into something colder, more calculated. Brandon wasn't the only one who could make strategic moves. When he called that evening, wondering why I hadn't answered his texts, I put on the performance of my life. Sorry, honey. Wedding errands ran longer than expected, I said, forcing cheer into my voice. Did you decide on the Armani or the Tom Ford for the rehearsal dinner? He launched into opinions about suit cuts, completely, unaware that everything had changed. As he spoke, I opened my laptop and began to type. Need to meet urgently. Wedding emergency. Don't tell Brandon. I sent the message to 4 people. Rachel, my father, our family lawyer, and the head of IT at Hamilton Partners. Then I listened. To my fiancé, this stranger I'd almost married, talk about our future while I planned his downfall. Let the games begin, I thought, a smile spreading across my face for the first time that day. I had 6 days until the wedding. 6 days to execute the perfect revenge without tipping off Brandon or creating a public scandal that could affect Hamilton Partners' stock price. The first person I met was Dad. We had breakfast at our usual spot, a discreet corner table at the Pierre where business deals had been negotiated by Hamiltons for 3 generations. When I told him what I'd overheard, his face went through a series of emotions: disbelief, anger, and finally, a cold resolution I recognized from board meetings where competitors were outmaneuvered. Are you absolutely certain? He asked, his voice steady despite the white-knuckle grip on his coffee cup. I nodded. He specifically mentioned pushing through the Westlake acquisition. That information isn't public, Dad. He's been mining our family for insider trading advantages. My father closed his eyes briefly. I've been bringing him to closed-door meetings for months. God knows what he's reported back to Meridian. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have been more careful. We both should have, I admitted. But now we need to fix it. By the time our eggs Benedict arrived, we had the outline of a plan. The next meeting was with Marcus Chen, head of IT at Hamilton Partners. I'd known Marcus since college when we interned together before he went on to become a cybersecurity expert. He listened silently as I explained what we needed, only interrupting once. You realize this needs to be airtight, right? If we're accusing a senior analyst at Meridian of corporate espionage, we need concrete proof. That's why I came to you, I said. Brandon has access to my father's home office when we visit for Sunday dinners. He's been photographing documents, I'm sure of it. And he has a shared calendar with me where he logs his client meetings that mysteriously align with my father's schedule. Marcus nodded slowly. I can check the network access logs, see if there's been any unusual activity from guest devices at your father's home. We'll need access to his devices too. Leave that to me, I promised. Getting Brandon's phone and laptop wasn't actually that difficult. He'd always been careless with his possessions around me, secure in the belief that I was too trusting, or perhaps too stupid, to invade his privacy. That night, I suggested a digital detox dinner where we both put our phones in a drawer to focus on each other before the wedding chaos. While he showered afterward, I quickly copied the contents of his phone using software Marcus had installed on my laptop. The evidence was damning. Text messages to Michael discussing information that could only have come from my father's confidential meetings. Calendar entries showing one-on-one meetings with Meridian's CEO suspiciously close to Hamilton board dates. Photos of documents, clearly taken in my father's study, with a distinctive corner of his antique desk visible in the frame. The lawyer confirmed what we already knew. Brandon had violated not just my trust, but several securities laws and his employment contract. Meridian would have no choice but to terminate him once they saw the evidence, unless they wanted to be implicated in his schemes. With 3 days to go, Rachel joined the conspiracy. As my maid of honor, she had legitimate reasons to contact vendors and make last-minute changes without arousing suspicion. She was also the only one who didn't seem shocked by Brandon's betrayal. I knew that Ken Doll was too perfect, she muttered as we reviewed the finalized plan in her Soho loft. No man cares that much about letterpress invitations unless he's planning to put them in a portfolio. I feel so stupid, I admitted, the facade of strength finally cracking. 2 years, Rach. 2 years of my life wasted on someone who was using me to get to my family's company. She grabbed my shoulders. Listen to me. You are not stupid. You are kind and trusting, and he is a sociopathic climber who exploited that. But now you're going to show him exactly who he messed with. The rehearsal dinner went perfectly. I played the blushing bride-to-be, accepting compliments and well wishes with practiced grace. Brandon was attentive, charismatic, completely In his element among the financial elite he'd so carefully cultivated. If he noticed anything off about my behavior, he didn't show it. As we left the restaurant, he pulled me close and whispered, "This time tomorrow, you'll be Mrs. Taylor. Everything we've planned for is finally happening." The irony of his phrasing made me smile genuinely for the first time that evening. "Yes," I agreed, kissing him lightly. "Everything we've planned for." The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear. The venue was transformation into an elegant wonderland of white, roses and crystal. Guests would be arriving in a few hours. The catering staff was already preparing the feast, and somewhere in the estate, Brandon was probably adjusting his custom tuxedo, rehearsing his vows, and imagining his bright future in my family's business. Updated. Need to clear something up from the comments. Yes, I continued with all the wedding plans on purpose. A few of you suggested I should have just canceled everything and ghosted him, but that wouldn't have exposed him properly. Also, don't worry, we didn't waste all that food from the reception. You'll see why in the next part. Who else is excited for the big reveal? I promise it's worth the wait. As I sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by flowers and champagne, Rachel helped me into my dress while the photographer captured candid moments for the wedding album that would never exist. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked quietly, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror as she adjusted my veil. Last chance to back out. I took a deep breath. "Absolutely certain. Everything's in place?" She nodded. "Your dad handled the last details. This morning. The IT guys finished setting up the AV system. Michael took the bait and confirmed the meeting location. Guests are being seated now." "And Brandon?" Blissfully unaware. "He sent you those." She pointed to a bouquet of white roses with a note that read, "To my beautiful bride. Today marks the beginning of our empire. All my love, B." I almost laughed at his choice of words. Empire. Indeed. At precisely 4:00 p.m., the wedding coordinator knocked on the door. "It's time," she announced, having no idea what was actually about to unfold. The ceremony space looked magical. 200 guests filled the white chairs, the afternoon sun casting a golden glow across the manicured lawns leading down to the water. Dad waited to walk me down the aisle, and when he saw me, his eyes misted slightly. "You look beautiful," he whispered, squeezing my hand. "And your mother would be so proud of your strength today." Brandon stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, a picture-perfect groom. As our eyes met across the distance, he smiled, that same confident smile that had once made my heart race, but now only reminded me of his betrayal. The music swelled, and Dad and I began our walk. I felt strangely calm, even as we reached the altar, and he placed my hand in Brandon's. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Brandon and I exchanged meaningful glances as vows were recited. When it came time for personal vows, Brandon went first. "Emma," he began, his voice thick with emotion that I now knew was entirely fabricated. "From the moment we met, I knew you were special. Not just beautiful and brilliant, but kind in a way that's rare in our world. You've opened your heart and your life to me, and I promise to cherish that gift forever. With you by my side, there's nothing we can't accomplish together. Our partnership," he smiled at my father as he emphasized the word, "will be my life's greatest achievement." The crowd sighed appreciatively. Several of my aunts were already dabbing at their eyes. Brandon looked so pleased with himself, so secure in his victory, that what happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. "And now, Emma's vows," the officiant prompted, turning to me expectantly. I stepped forward, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. Instead of speaking directly to Brandon, I turned to address our guests. "I want to thank you all for coming today," I began, my voice clear and steady. "Many of you traveled far to celebrate what you believed was a union of love. I apologize because I've brought you here under false pretenses." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Brandon's smile faltered, confusion clouding his features. See, I recently discovered what this wedding really means to my fiancé." I gestured to the sound technician who had been briefed earlier. Perhaps Brandon should explain in his own words. The speakers crackled, and then Brandon's voice filled the air, not his present self, but the recording from his office. "Emma has no idea. Her dad's already talking about bringing me into the executive team after the honeymoon. This wedding is just the final strategic move. By this time next year, I'll have enough board influence to push through that Westlake acquisition. We've been discussing." The color drained from Brandon's face. He stepped toward me, reaching for the microphone. "Emma, there's been a misunderstanding." "Let me finish," I said, my voice harder now. While Brandon thought he was executing a brilliant strategic move, he was actually committing multiple violations of corporate espionage laws. I nodded to my father, who stood up, along with our company's legal counsel. On the screens that had been set up to show wedding photos, evidence began to appear. Screenshots of texts, photos of confidential documents, calendar entries, all meticulously cataloged and time-stamped. Meridian Capital has already received copies of this evidence, I continued as Brandon's expression shifted from confusion to horror. Their legal team has been in touch with our legal team. I believe your termination paperwork was processed yesterday, Brandon. The crowd was absolutely silent now, 200 people collectively holding their breath. So while there won't be a wedding today, I said, removing my engagement ring and placing it on the podium, I see no reason to waste a perfectly good party. I'd like to invite you all to stay and celebrate something else instead. My promotion to Chief Strategy Officer at Hamilton Partners effective immediately. My father stood, raising his glass. To Emma Hamilton, he announced, the best decision-maker in the family. Security personnel, discreetly hired for this exact moment, appeared at Brandon's side as he stood frozen in shock. Michael was similarly, being escorted from the guest section, his face ashen as he realized his career was over as well. You can't do this, Brandon finally managed, his voice cracking. Do you have any idea who I am? I smiled, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in a week. I know exactly who you are, Brandon, that's the problem. As he was escorted away, the band began playing and waitstaff appeared with champagne trays. What had been planned as a wedding reception smoothly transitioned into a corporate celebration. Many guests looked confused, but as my father briefly explained the situation to key people, understanding and support spread through the crowd. Rachel appeared at my side, champagne in hand. Well, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen, she said, clinking her glass against mine. How do you feel? I watched as Brandon was escorted to a waiting car, his perfect future dismantled in less than 10 minutes. Lighter, I admitted, like I just dodged the world's most expensive bullet. The party continued well into the night. I kicked off my wedding heels, changed into a cocktail dress that had been prepared as part of the plan, and celebrated with people who were genuinely happy for my success, not just what they could gain from it. By Monday morning, the story had spread throughout the financial district. Brandon's reputation was in tatters, his career effectively over. Meridian issued a public statement distancing themselves from his actions and pledging full cooperation with any investigation. Hamilton Partners' stock rose 3 points by market close. I channeled my wedding planning energy into my new role, diving into strategy meetings and development plans. The Westlake acquisition that Brandon had been so eager to sabotage went through smoothly under my guidance, adding a significant portfolio to our holdings. 6 months later, an envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a letter from Brandon, written from his parents' home in Connecticut, where he'd been living since no financial firm would touch him. Emma, it began, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that what started as strategy became real for me. I did love you in my way. If I could go back and change things, I would choose you over any career advancement. I miss you. Every day. I read it twice, then dropped it into the shredder beside my desk. That evening, I met Rachel for drinks at our favorite rooftop bar. The New York skyline glittered around us as we discussed the Foundation's latest initiative, a mentorship program for women entering the financial sector. Heard anything from what's-his-name recently? She asked, sipping her martini. I smiled. Nothing worth repeating. I raised my glass. To dodged bullets and new beginnings. I'll drink to that, she laughed. Think you'll ever trust enough to try again? Dating, I mean? I looked out at the city, considering her question. Eventually. But next time, I'll remember that the best strategic move is always being true to yourself. A month after the non-wedding, I launched a new division at Hamilton Partners focused on ethical investment strategies. My experience with Brandon had clarified what really mattered to me, using our family's influence to create positive change, not just profit. The initiative has already attracted significant clients who want their money to reflect their values. Updated, I'm overwhelmed by all your amazing comments and support. So many of you have asked for updates on my life now. I'm doing great. The ethical investment division is thriving, and yes, I'm finally dating again, very cautiously. Brandon tried reaching out through mutual friends last month, but some lessons you only need to learn once. Would you ever give someone like him a second chance, or am I right to keep that door firmly closed?